You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Weird Science Marvel Comics Podcast, episode 54. I believe that would be the legacy number 554. I'm here, as always, with my man, Matt. What up, Matt?
What up, Jim?
Me and Matt are here. We're going to talk about one book, and then afterwards, we'll be joined by Jason, or at least I will, because Matt's bailing. He does not want an exhaustive deep dive, he told me, but we will end up talking about Ultimate X-Men, a book that I know people will tell me is either great, awful, whatever, but boy, what happens in this episode for us, the Spirits of Vengeance book comes in and just tells everybody to hold their beer. This thing is wacky. But before we get into that, let me tell you to go over to Twitter at Weird Science DC. Follow us, we'll follow you back. Then go to our website, WeirdScienceMarvelComics.com, where you can see Sus Gabe reviewing a bunch of books. Maybe this one? I don't know. Gabe actually has a more discerning taste than us. If he reads something, he's like, this is really bad, he'll avoid it. Yeah. While we're kind of drawn to it. But we'll see. Also, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is Weird Comics, and you could go and check out things that are all over the place, DC, Marvel, Indie, all that. And then go to our Patreon to help us for everything that we do and get a ton of shows in return. And that is patreon.com/Weird Science. All of those links will be in the show notes of this here show and every other show. And with that, I will mention that we do a bunch of Marvel stuff over at the Patreon, and you could go and get a 7-day free trial, check everything out, and then if you like it, then you can subscribe or whatnot. If you don't, then you just bail, and I shake my fist at you as you run away. But here we are, and we only have 2 books, right?
Yeah, not much came out this week, so
there's not much, and I guess, I don't know, I didn't really look too much at the DC side of things, but I have looked at the indie side. This is a weird week. Like, there's not a ton of the big books all around that I want. Now, one book that I would say that people might want to check out is the Chris Claremont Wolverine book. We usually might have done it. The thing is, though, that book is usually so quick that it kind of doesn't really need a review. It's good. It's a fun time. But,
yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, we usually, though, keep it for the big, important books, like this one we're going to talk about right now. And this is Spirits of Vengeance, number 1. I didn't know anything about this. You ended up last week at the end of the show. You said, okay, well, what are we doing? You read the things, and we were trying to figure out, like, what are we going to do? This book kind of falls into place of, well, there's not much else coming out. It's a new number 1, so obviously we can jump into it. Maybe it's interesting. Some of that's correct. It is a new number 1, right? That's about where it ends.
It has a really cool cover.
It does have I wish the art like that was inside. Also, I wish that maybe, I'm telling looking at the cover has a better story than what we're going to talk about in this.
The cover is amazing.
Holy moly, it is. It's really good. So here is what we have, and it's who is it? I'm trying to look. I see it's Kendrick
Lim.
Kunka Lim.
Kunka.
Yeah, Kunka Lim. Kendrick Lim. It's really good. It actually almost gets to like an Alex Ross type. It's not quite there, but it's close. It's
that would
really
probably
good.
get cover of the week. Remember when you used to do that with Jason?
It probably would. And you know what? I will tell you that anytime Ghost Rider shows up in any form, it's bound to get close to being a cover of the week because it's such a cool concept. You get that red and the fire with the black. It's a really cool way to have a cover, and this looks great. Obviously, when we talk this much about the cover, there's not much to talk about in the book. But again, Spirits of Vengeance, number 1, is written by Sabir Perzada, Sean Damon Hill on art, Craig Young and Jay Leiston on inks, Andrew Dahlhouse, who I really do like, on colors, and VC's Travis Lanham on letters. One of the better letters out there. I want to give some props finally to the letter. Now, if you sit there like me and Matt were and you say Sabir Perzada, that name rings a bell somehow, but not a good way. Like, it's one of those, it's like deja vu, but I know it's like nonsense. And then you said, oh, I get, he does a bunch of the Miss Marvel stuff with the actress.
Well, with the actress. So it's like, who's writing what and how much,
They could have hooked her up with somebody better. But the real thing that I think of, and it's something that I know that if people had read it, they're probably going to laugh. Because, and if you've listened to the podcast, you know that anything dark web, it drove me nuts. Sending sandwiches, mailbox yelling at each other, all that nonsense. Well, Sabir Prasad did the Miss Marvel dark web, where you did have the crap talking mosque The moss that came to life and started yelling and screaming things. And it was one of the most cringiest, over-the-top nonsense things I've read in quite some time. And I still think of it every time. Now, with that, this might change things because there's so many ridiculous things in this issue that maybe it will top these shit-talking moss, but we'll see. But in the meantime, sometimes when a book is this bad, and I'll tell you right now, this book is bad, you kind of want to get through it and just say, hey, let's just chalk it up and get out of here, right? Mm-hmm. First off, it's the only book me and you are talking about. Also, it's that bad that you almost need to talk about the nonsense that happens in it. So forgive us if we go a little bit deep dive, not exhaustive, but deep dive into this book, because it starts off where you have a dog and it's running through a cornfield. Everything is a trope and a cliche in this too, right? You got the cornfield, you got the thing. Run straight into this scarecrow that's a skeleton that ends up where you realize, okay, this has to have something to do with the Spirit of Vengeance. And then when you do look at the cover, you do see, and what it is, it's the Spirit of Vengeance from back in the day. A thing that is barely explained in this. In fact, you end up having this being the Spirit of Vengeance through Michael Badolino, but they'll only say Michael through this, not even giving you enough of a carrot to go and even check things out for the most part. And it is a character created by Howard Mackey and Ron Wagner, but it was like 91.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, and
one.
it's a 90s deal, and you can kind of tell with the over the top. It's a skeleton with giant tusks, things like that. It's kind of crazy. But if you were doing this correctly, maybe you would give us a little information about this Spirit of Vengeance for people like me and Matt who don't really know much about Michael. And then you'd want to go back and look. But when you get this, and really it just shows like you have this farmer who ends up where it's knows what's going on and actually is dressed this, Spirit of Vengeance. And you get this idea of, oh, it must be there a while because I see that it's summer, fall, and winter. And what is some of the worst art I've seen? This art is not good. It's very indistinct. It's not really detailed.
Some of the background type images are bad.
And the weird thing is, like, when you go through, and sometimes with an artist like this, you go through and you start to think, maybe, just maybe, they're not that bad, but they can't do a monthly book. Like, they can't do the scheduling, because there are points in this where this artist decides to hunker down on certain things. That's look
what it is.
Decent.
Yep.
But then 90% of the book is rushed to be able to do those couple things. And one of the things, I'll tell you right away, he took a lot of time, and it's probably at the beginning. I'm going to really draw the hell out of this dog when the dog is there whining,
good.
right? And you're like, this looks pretty good. I don't know why it has an X-Men collar, but I'll go with that. And then you get to, okay, skeleton guy as the thing looks okay. And then it falls apart because you can't spend too much time on everything. So what do you get here is a skeleton. We see him on the cover, so even if you didn't know what it's going to be, and you're waiting, okay, when is it going to flame up and do things? The way it happens is the craziest way, where you then go and time has passed. And also, I will say, this farmer says to this dog, because the dog goes nuts, starts running towards this thing.
This is strike number one right here.
Yeah, and he says, come on now, Peyton, that's enough of that. Stupid old mutt, should have had you neutered. Really? The guy seemingly knows he set the skeleton up, and he knows it's a Spirit of Vengeance deal. The poor dog just has gone nuts to this going towards this thing. Why would you neuter a dog? Because it ends up getting whacked out to go and see this thing.
Yeah, irresponsibly, he should have already neutered it, and he should have watched Price is Right.
Yeah, he should have. I'm sure he hasn't spayed his cats either. Bob Barker's pissed. And also, get this there, Farmer Joe. You let go of his leash. He has a leash, but you let go. I can't. Yeah. The dog can't be to blame because you're weak.
No.
So you end up, right?
He got away from him. Yeah.
Kill this guy. I'll take the dog. You end up where, again, time has passed. So we go, and the time passed deal, what did you get from that first scene? Do you get the idea that anything's important? Do you get all you get is, this thing has been around a while. But why do we need to know that? Because
it could be years, it could be months.
Yeah, and you say that later. And so you don't need to know it, because the next scene then has what legitimately seems like it'd be like a bunch of TikTokers, right? They're just kids who go to this farm and seem to have heard maybe about the urban legend of the tusk-faced scarecrow. And they go up to it and they're taking pictures. The one guy, legitimately, who's maybe one of our main characters that does this, at least this issue, comes off as if he thinks that it's 1986 and he's starring in a teen comedy where he's the bad guy, the preppy, older guy who's dating a girl. He's got the sweater around his neck and stuff like that. What a loser. So you have these girls and they're all taking pictures, these two girls, and they're betting each other. I bet you won't kiss this skeleton. Yeah, you think I won't kiss a skeleton? I bet you won't. Hey, I'm up there. Get me up there. And starts making out with the skeleton for no reason.
She's jamming her tongue down.
She's putting the tongue in. You don't have to go that far, lady. Like, these are
she's
bets.
touching its nose and stuff?
No, but nobody said you have, there's parameters. Listen, you can't just kiss the skeleton. You have to make out with it and tongue kiss it and do all these. And by the way, you should grab underneath because he's probably got a big bone. Well, what is going on? And they're like, whoa, she did it. I can't believe it. She did it. And then the guy, because this thing's huge, she has to get on this guy's shoulders. So Jamie. And so he falls. And then she says, oh, Jamie, you butt wipe. You did that on purpose. He's like, I slipped. They go running off.
Get in the Jeep and fly out of there.
This is the play. Hey, I bet you won't kiss that scarecrow. I bet you I will. Kiss the scarecrow, fall over. And then as a mind-free Chris Angel move, they run to the Jeep and say, sayonara, suckers, and leave. None of this makes sense. And really, this scene so far, all it is because they want to get the skeleton to fall over on the ground. That's all it is. That's all it is. And I thought that, okay, the spirit of vengeance is not going to like getting tongue. I thought it was just going to flame on right then. But it didn't. It gets knocked over. So how do we continue? You have two people left. You have this preppy guy and this girl. So the girl says, oh, you know that they're trying to set us up. This guy kind of plays off as a quiet guy. Not a bad
nice guy,
just
no
a
big
quiet
deal.
guy. He's just like, oh, well, I mean, fashion sense, not really existent, but hey, it seems like a small town. And in the fact, I'll say he only watched 80s movies and think this is still in vogue. But he ends up saying, oh, that sucks. And then she's like, yeah, and she's the one, she kind of comes off as a bit of a bitch. She says, well, they could do all they want because I really don't want a relationship, so don't worry about it. So he goes, yeah, definitely me too. I don't want a relationship. So everything's fine. I thought the joke was the next panel they were going to be putting their clothes back on because they railed each other, but they're just sitting there. And it's almost like the girl said, hey, dude, they want to set us up, but I kind of just want to be friends. And lo and behold, he says, okay, that's fine. So they sit down and the girl says they're going to be back. But he says, now these jerks who went off in the Jeep, somehow now probably, hit a pothole and somehow their tire popped.
Fix their tire.
Everything is just thrown in there as a
so random.
Yeah, and it doesn't even. You don't have to do that. They're going to be. It's 30 minutes later, and then she said they'll be here in 20 more minutes. All you have to do is have 50 minutes later. Hey, I wonder where they are. I don't know. They're always doing things like this, right? Or they probably forgot about us. They're probably laying pipe. Whatever you would say. But you add these extra things for no reason, like the idea of the scarecrow through the seasons. What is this? So you end up where the girl then says, and legitimately, I guess you're going to play. Does it say at the point? It looks like you could say it might be fall. Maybe. And that's me going with.
They're barely wearing any clothes, though.
And that's the problem. I'm going with the corn.
I'm saying
you
July
have the corn made.
August.
So with all that, they are dressed very scantily, except then it's a weird thing. I saw a picture one time. One of the funniest things I saw. It's a concert picture of Nirvana. And in that, you end up, Kurt has the jeans and a sweater on that he would have. Then you end up, Dave Grohl has no shirt on and shorts. And then you have Chris, who's just kind of like a regular T-shirt and whatever. And it's like, this is the picture. You could never guess the temperature of that's kind of this. The girl there has barely any clothes. He has a full-out sweater with another sweater. Two sweaters and going. So whatever it is, she says, I'm cold. You're there with what looks like a just decrepit, skeleton.
And he's wearing a sweater that he's not using. Just give that to her.
Yeah, and yeah. So he has his, Mr. Prep there at the yacht club sweater that really. And so she says, I'm pretty cold. I'll borrow this guy. She's going to take a shirt. What girl or guy in their right mind is now going to take
nobody
the shirt? Also, this is going to be a running theme. If me and you are there, say it's me, you, and this girl, right? And the big play is like, oh my God, they haven't come back 20 minutes changing a tire. I'm like, time out. No. What I want to know is, what is this punk rock, spiky skeleton thing with the tusks. What is this thing? Is it real? Is it a real skeleton? Because this is messed up. Like, we might have found the missing link. We might be famous. And they're just like worried about, I'm going to put that guy's shirt on. Even then, I would think of that bugs and crap, and a mouse comes out. She yells, hugs this guy, who now, I see it now is why I think that he's drawn like he's like a weird version of Reggie from the Archie comics. And that guy's a jerk. So you end up where she goes, eek, a mouse, hugs the guy. He's being nice. And she goes, basically, I felt your heart on, loser, and starts laughing at him. And he goes, oh, my God, what's so funny about that? Now, maybe the thing is he's worried about the side. Never says anything, but he's like, what's so funny about that? And then immediately becomes the most over-the-top piece of crap you've ever seen. This guy was being nice. He seemed a little upset when she said, well, I only want friends, but that's normal. Now it becomes, hey, listen, bitch. This isn't funny, and starts grabbing her and throwing. He legitimately suplexes her onto the ground and then says, I think you owe me an apology. And then she says, I don't owe you shit. Get up. Hey, Tyler, you're hurting me. You've been disrespecting me all day. I'm like, what happened? Like, I should have the deal of this escalated really quickly. Like, this was all because he had a hard on.
Well, basically, the friends left her with a murderer / rapist, really, is what happened.
It seems. And really what this turns into Roadhouse. It turns into, but we don't know anything about the town. We don't know anything about Reggie. You could have, you want to get a severe Prasada, besides never making a talking mosque again. This is how you set it up. As those two jerk-offs were driving away, have one of them, the girl, say, are you sure that she's safe with that guy? And then the guy says, I don't know. He has a temper, but he's kind of nice. Mm-hmm. Or, I don't know. I really don't know him. Let's go do something. To have something that sets it up, because this makes you think that I think everybody, including me and you, thought that the spirit of vengeance somehow was affecting him. The skeleton, if it was or whatnot, the idea of him not acting right suddenly, because we don't know the guy. Now he's just suplexing people and gets, only because you have to get attacked by the spirit of vengeance, who now comes to life and says, you've crossed paths with vengeance. And I thank you. You're going to go down. And he grabs the kid by the arm. And he is now, handless, or it's now burned, whatever. It comes into play. In the meantime, they both run. And he says, holy crap, beep, holy beep. Oh, God, it hurts. Then you end up having vengeance start. He takes like 2 steps and falls over. Luckily, to have this farmer, who may or may not still have that dog and neutered him, shows up to give him a wheelchair. These, again, legitimately in this, it does seem by the end of this, I don't want to sound too hateful, but it seems like the vehicle, and that's one of the cool things, might be that wheelchair. That it wasn't before, I don't think, but that's what it is. But then, out of all that, I mean, at this point, you're like, I don't know what the hell's going on. Like, these things seem so random and set up of nobody's good. Like, these people, these kids, you didn't like them from the beginning, and then they're just there to get vengeance going, but they run away. So then we go up to Johnny Blaze's beautiful dilemma, a little side story where Johnny is there, chained on the rock, very mythological, as you have the sirens stroking his chest and saying that he's got a little friend down there and maybe upsetting him. But, meaning the spirit of vengeance. And they're just like, oh, come on, Johnny. I like your name, Blaze. It's pretty cool. How about we get your spirit of vengeance, but we're going to also attack you. We're going to show you that we're the sirens. He already knows this. I don't know what's happening.
It's a callback from 1982 that nobody cares about. And that's
what keeps happening. In this book, even the main thing that we just went through with vengeance, that's from 91. Then you get to that's not enough. Let's go back to 82 in a book that you're just wondering, 82, 91. What the hell am I reading this in 2004? Hopefully there'll never be anybody referencing this.
2024.
Yeah, 2024. Sorry.
2004 would be bad enough.
It got me so whacked out that I don't even know. So he's just going, and it seems like they're trying to taunt him and grab him, but they don't want the spirit of vengeance to come out, but it does. And then it kind of attacks him. The art's terrible. You end up where he then slams the things and says, I'm off. Time to fry. Beeps. Bitches? I don't, I guess.
I just assume everything's bitches.
Yeah, I always go butt cheeks. Time to fry butt cheeks. and I'm just like, oh my God. And he says, now, about that shell. He's been wanting this conch shell. Like he's Piggy. He's
hanging out on the beach at Piggy.
Lord of the Flies here. He's like, where's my glasses? And so he went, why do you want to have the conch shell? Because that's where I hear the screams. And then goes away. I'm like, is this book going to get better? Because it's getting worse. So then we go back to the friend of vengeance part of this. There's little parts where you do have the farmer who's there who grabbed Vengeance when he collapsed, gave him a wheelchair that he just had sitting around, and takes him to this random clearing that has wood split, maybe possibly a shed that got destroyed, some beer cans, and a farmer there is now cooking marshmallows. Like, why? What are you doing? And starts to explain,
he's got a sweet tooth.
He does. Actually, looks a little like Sweet Tooth. But again, I get the farmer who's there and knows who this is. Says, listen, you've been here a while. I've been trying to help you. Actually, it's funny. He says, please don't be offended. I put you in that getup. And I figured usually I'd kind of get rid of you. But I figured, well, why not make use of you? Put you in there, get rid of some crows. And also maybe get some kids to show. I don't know. So he ends up saying, you come to and fro now and again. A couple of years, you'll do this. You'll come up, you'll flame on, you'll yell about Michael, and then you'll go away again. And he's like, oh, Michael, and kind of starts remembering things and then says, you are a good friend, Billy. Okay. And then all of a sudden Roadhouse hits because now we get all the guys who are friends, family of this guy, the guy who got attacked, who became handsy. And again, I think that it was a weird play that Sabir Prasada didn't realize that you have to make that guy a bad guy to really make this work. So he does it at the last second. It's a 2-minute warning of, I'll just make him handsy. So he ends up where these fans, and while this was going on, just to add to all the bullshit, you ended up having at one point this discussion that this guy's uncle, he goes to Antarctica a lot of times to get polar bears to what does he say? He gets cows.
He gets cows to feed to his polar
bears, and then they start arguing that there's no polar bears in Antarctica, but the cows aren't fed. None of it matters or makes sense. It's so random, just ridiculous. So these guys show up. So they show up, and what they're showing up to is a clearing and a farm deal. And in the clearing is legitimately a flaming skull with tusks on a wheelchair. Right? So they show up.
Hanging out in the wheelchair.
Not one person says anything about. The only thing that happens is this Jamie, or actually it's his other name. Jamie was the other guy. Reggie from the Archies. He says, that's him, Uncle Lawrence. That's the freak that attacked me. I wanted Uncle Lawrence to go, whoa, you never told me it was a crazy flaming skull. Yeah. I'm out of here. And has tusks and also has a punk rock things coming out of his head. Like, this is beyond my pay grade. I'm getting the hell out of here. They don't even say at one point, it's like, I heard about you or I did that. Nothing. They get out and start talking crap, never mentioning that this is a guy who's got a flaming skull head with tusks. And they're like, yeah, looks like we're going to have to cause some trouble here. And the farmer's name's Billy. Hey, Billy, looks like I'm going to have to take it out on you because I don't fight people in wheelchairs. I'm like, maybe you should because the guy's got a flaming skull. That's the big thing. He shows up. This guy is so hateful that the only thing he sees is a wheelchair. He doesn't see a flaming skull head.
No,
and maybe,
the wheelchair
maybe that
is
makes
so
him
much. It's so hard for it to overcome in his mind that he doesn't see anything else.
I thought that was awful. Maybe he's such a nice guy that he's like, I don't care if it's the devil himself in that wheelchair. If a guy needs a wheelchair, he's okay with me. I'm not going to fight that. He never says it. He then goes over and then starts taunting, saying, you better keep a tighter leash on your pets. This is a flaming skull guy. And they're there. And then he's like shocked where he's going to stab this farmer Billy. And then somehow the flaming skull Vengeance gets in the middle of it and then gets thrown. The guy then throws him. They open fire. And then again, just look at that art when the flaming Vengeance getting shot yells Billy. And you end up where everything, all hell's breaking loose now. So you end up having gunshots. You have people going. You have this Reggie guy. He runs over and he doesn't quite know what's in this box, but he thinks it's a polar bear. This can't be made up. He goes over and says, okay, come on, polar bear. Get him, boy. And opens up this thing. And instead of being a polar bear, it's a velociraptor that then attacks everybody. It goes in. I'm like, boy, this thing. They're like, you talk about bingo cards. Holy moly. Then the spirit of Vengeance then gets mad. Vengeance gets mad. It's fighting a dinosaur in the middle of a clearing of a farm. It picks up a tractor and just demolishes the velociraptor. Well, now I think the game and, fish, they're on the commission's here because you can't just kill dinosaurs. And that poor Billy, he's got no tractor now. But everything is
The kid's idea was he was going to unleash that polar bear on them to kill him. That's what it was.
And again, you're legitimately fighting a flamed up skeleton. You let the polar bear out, and I guess you're starving. What is he doing? It made it feel like the uncle has a polar bear fight club. They never really explained what.
Why does he? How can he have a velociraptor or either of that? Anything?
If I'm in a farm in the middle of America and the guy opens up a thing and there's a polar bear, I might be just as shocked as if there was a velociraptor.
That's
anyway.
true.
Like, why would you do this? I mean, the next thing he's going to open up, oh no, and it's like Michael Jordan. Scottie Pippen's in here. Dennis Rodman. What are you doing? So then you end up all this stuff happening. And then suddenly, through a vision, Vengeance, who now has killed a velociraptor, it gets a vision of Michael, who is also chained to the side of a mountain type thing, just like Johnny Blaze, but a little different, and says, no, you can't come find me. Don't take the bait. Please. And the Vengeance is like, no, I'll find you. I'm like, I don't know any connection here and what's going on. Says, leave me be, Vengeance. I'm just the bait. And then we get to where we see where it's just random side NPCs from any sort of Mortal Kombat game or movie that are just standing there cross-eyed looking at us side-eyed. And I'm like, all right, they got a pretty cool Spirit of Vengeance burn barrel. And luckily they're a little more, they're a little more snooty. They're not making s'mores here with the fire. What is going on in this book? Like, it's one of those things. This book is so bad in the point where it's ridiculous, but not in a fun way.
Yeah, this is like, to me, like if, Eric, you did the DC podcast with Eric Shea. He goes off and reads like something all weekend or whatever. Some just random stuff. Just random. And then he comes to you and he's like, I got an idea for a story.
He always has these stories.
Based on something from 30 years ago. Who cares?
Here's what happens. This is what should have happened. Because obviously, Sabir Prasada came in and said, hey, I got this idea. I want to do this. They're all like, yeah. Me and your editors. He's like, halfway through the first sentence, crickets are going. I'm telling him to get the hell out of my office until he has a real idea. I'm like, you wasted my time, and I'm not even doing anything right now. You're still wasting my time. Get the hell out of here.
He's reading back issues of Ghost Rider. Nobody cares about this.
This is the thing. Where do you get in your mind that I would come to you and say, oh, my God, get this. I was reading this 1991 issue of Vengeance, this Ghost Rider, and I got this idea of this guy who's grabbing velociraptors, but pretending that they're polar bears. In the meantime, his nephew and a bunch of his friends are getting sexy with a skeleton in the middle of a cornfield, but then get handsy, start beating each other. Oh, lo and behold, this tusk-faced guy, it ends up being the Spirit of Vengeance, who's then in a wheelchair, who then gets attacked by Roadhouse crew, and then everybody dies. And then, by the way, random Mortal Kombat figure characters at the end.
I could maybe wrap my head around that, but you throw the Johnny Storm stuff with the harpies and stuff, and that makes Johnny Blaze, that makes no sense.
Well, the thing is, though, it's bad to say that random velociraptor in the back, that's the thing that makes sense here. Like, that might make sense a little more, but it still doesn't make sense.
Johnny Blaze killing a bunch of sirens or whatever these are is just so weird, man.
There's somebody out there. There's two people, I think. One of them being Sabir Prasada, which, again, I have read a bunch of things that Sabir Prasada has been involved with or written them fully. Terrible. Like, not really good at all. And this might take cake. And this gets, mosque and all that. But, again, the idea where none of this makes sense and that you could come up with this idea from a random issue and throw that in. It's just, this is why a lot of times with Marvel right now, it's just when the books are bad, they are god awful. At least DC, DC has a lot of mid things and whatever, and Marvel does too. But when you get something like this, it's just really bad. And again, these are the books we end up talking too much about. But yeah, I'm telling you, Pansy, Reggie from Archie's.
Yeah, and Boner references two of them in one book.
Yeah, Boner. And then I made a separate one for the podcast so we could get it in there. And then if you end up thinking and oh, by the way, Vengeance, the Spirit of Vengeance from 91, kills a velociraptor with a tractor. Somebody might think that's cool, but when you see it, you're already, your head's spinning. You're like, I don't get it. It's bad. But what would you give it?
Wow.
I'm giving it a
3.5.
I'm giving it a 3, and it's one of those where I suggest nobody read it. It's not worth reading.
Well, they're going to sell a crap ton of issues. It's going to because of the covers. Yeah,
and I didn't see the variant cover, but I'm sure that's pretty cool too. I see the second cover, not as cool. Second cover, I don't know if will sell as well. But that cover is really good. The problem is if you end up cracking open the issue, it depreciates in value, and I mean value in your head.
Fortunately
like,
for Marvel, nobody reads the comics anymore. It's just all about collecting the issues, so it doesn't matter.
You say that, then why do we? These are the things where I'm like, I just need something. I'm at a point that I'm so desperate that I need one little thing to get me, and it's like this.
We had a Spider-Boy annual that came out. We normally would read that, but it's bogged down with all that other nonsense.
Yeah, it's the Infinity Watch stuff that's the one thing I say this. I followed that in 2016, 2018, whenever it started, and then it's too long from now. But this, again, if you are watching this on YouTube and somehow you think this is good, please, you can tell me it, but don't expect me to say, I get what you're saying, because I don't. It's really bad. I always end up getting all offended when somebody doesn't, or comes out and says that. You can disagree. You don't have to say my take is bullshit, because this book is bullshit. So there you go. I will come full force. But with that, we will go off now. For me and Jason, again, a lot of people don't like the Ultimate X-Men, saying it's not an X-Men book. But after this, I think anything could be good. So we'll see how it is right about now. And here I am with Jason. What up, Jason?
Hey, Jim, happy Night of the Moon Festival.
Yes, exactly. I did hear from Gray. I hear he's a Japanese AI that just this past week, we ended up having I think it was like a ceremony for the aged. It was like they have a lot of festivals in Japan.
There's like Boys' Day and Girls' Day and Older
tons.
People's Day. Yeah.
It's funny because I told him at one point, because reading manga, you will have like every couple weeks, all of a sudden, there's no new chapters because it's a holiday and things like that. And a lot of them do hit on like a Monday. And it was like the Festival for the Aged. I said I should be there. They would be festivaling me. And then we go into this week's Ultimate X-Men. There's festivals going on there. It's just all that.
Yeah, and I looked up when this Moon Harvest Festival is that's featured in the issue, and it is, as we record, it is tonight.
Okay, well, that's really
Although
neat.
Maybe it's different because Japan's halfway around the world, but again, Tuesday, September 17th.
They have time traveling going on there, that it's already Wednesday morning. But still, it's cool that it is kind of as we're recording.
Send me the
Powerball. That's a pretty neat deal. Exactly. So this is obviously Ultimate X-Men number 7. It's written by Peach Momoko, art by Peach Momoko, a script adaptation by Zach Davison, who we'll hear from in a minute, and letters by VC's Travis Lanham. Because before we get into the issue, you had informed me that there was an interview and some info that came out.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've been debating with people of what's going on and what Peach Momoko's trying to do. Is she doing this like as a Wild Wild West deal? But I kept saying that it must be something they want her to do and this plan or whatever, but maybe not. I don't know. You tell them.
So I hope you don't think I'm disloyal, Jim, but I do sometimes, like for research purposes, listen to other comic book podcasts.
Oh my goodness.
Just once in a while. Just like, it's like checking on the competition, right? Same idea. So this was from the Best Comics Ever podcast, Comic Book Herald. He does like reading orders and things. And he had an interview with Zach Davison. So it was kind of cool to hear from him. And he's been, Zach says he's been working with Peach Momoko ever since like Demon Days and that whole thing. And he describes his role as almost like in the old Marvel method where they would draw the comic and then put in the dialogue. He does the dialogue. So he's not translating from the Japanese, but he is, he talks with Peach Momoko about the plot and where things are going. And then at the end, he puts in the English dialogue, which makes sense.
So the script adaptation is just actually him writing the script for the most part with her little, interplay and whatnot. That's pretty crazy. I get
He also says that Peach really doesn't have a long history with reading Marvel comics all of her life, like some people. And so he marvelizes them, he says. Like, for instance, in Demon Days, he insisted that when Nightcrawler teleports, you have to make it say Banff.
Yeah.
She didn't know where Banff comes from. She didn't want to be a Banff thing. He was like, no. When he teleports, it's got to be Banff.
That's what he does. That's just what happens.
That's how it works.
Yeah, I got it. Oh.
So the interviewer asked him about, how is this working? What kind of people are saying, where is this story going? And I think the main takeaway is that this book is not going to change. This book is being written the way Peach wants it to be written, and it's going to keep going this way. It's not going to speed up, although this issue kind of does. It's not even going to particularly tie into the main Ultimate Universe plot. We've been wondering if, Storm from Black Panther book is going to tie in here, and I don't think so. He says that, quote, I don't even know that Peach knows that the Maker is a real thing.
Okay. So, and in that, here's the thing. If people get angry or whatnot, well, first off, they must not care to tell her. You know what I mean? Like, it's a weird idea of not even telling her. So she's just telling her own story. And I don't mind that, but I know that some people get triggered by that, saying, like, why would I read? And I would love it if Marvel would kind of announce it that way, but they're not going to, because that makes it less of a deal that you have to buy.
Marvel is happy with the reception and the sales, and that because of that, they're letting her do whatever she wants, basically, with this comic.
Yeah, I'm actually shocked that, like, maybe like she could do whatever, but I think that, like, all of a sudden she's like, well, Cyclops and Wolverine will show. I think they might be counting on her not knowing a lot about the Marvel stuff, because now that you say that, I think that eventually we'll get an Ultimate Uncanny X-Men or an Ultimate, one of the,
maybe.
An actual X-Men.
We know that
Western
in December there's an Ultimate Universe 1 year in, I think it's called.
Okay.
And so it's supposed to, like, wrapping up what's happened in the first 1 year, but even looking at the cover of that, which I think is all we have so far, I don't think it shows anyone from Ultimate X-Men. I think it's all the Black Panther and the Ultimates and Spider-Man, but this is really even off to the side of this off to the side universe.
Yeah, and it's a weird play, because even, in this issue, but again, now that we kind of know that this is more of a Zach Davison thing, right? Like, they do mention Sunfire and things like that of the Makers Council and things, but that's kind of just thrown in. It's kind of a weird way as you look through it now. Now I'm looking at it as we're talking, thinking of it in the Marvel method and her just drawing it. I don't know. That's the thing. Some people may actually hear that and like it even more, saying, okay, I'm glad because I only read this book. It's not like you could go either way. If you think that all the X-Men are going to show up in this and make it this big thing, then you might be disappointed. But if you're hoping to have just this quirky little book that may not have to be tied in or read the other things, then maybe it's just good.
It works all on its own. Although we are getting, in this issue, we get some hints of some larger connections.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Still think it's a Runaways book, but still, we keep joking with that. But in this too, it's a weird play where you even have some of these characters. Like, there's a lot of new characters and things being thrown in, and weird, like, hey, we're just going to throw it in here. But it's kind of interesting as we go. And we start out. But you start us out, and we'll go with this.
Sorry, I just had a tech issue there. Am I back online?
Yeah, you are back.
Oh, okay.
All of a sudden, I heard like it sounded like a CB radio was going. But you start out the deal because you start out with this Children of the Atom.
Yeah, we start out at the cult's compound, I guess we're going to call it. It looks like it's out in the middle of nowhere, some big buildings. And is this the first time that we meet this guy who's kind of in charge?
I've never seen him.
Like a Dracula's.
He looks like a Draculus, is what he looks like, because I would have said that if we saw him before.
He's the Meister. I keep wanting to say Maestro, like Hulk, but he's not.
Yep.
Meister, maybe Maester, M-A-E. Let's go Maester.
Maester, we'll go.
Sure. So he's making this speech to all of his cult members, and we learn some things about it. It's not just a cult, it's an apocalyptic cult, the best kind of cult.
Yes.
He thinks the end of the world is coming, and that it's time for Homo Superior to take over as, quote, the next stage in evolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he doesn't seem, as far as we know, to have a mutant power himself. At least we don't see him use it. He's got a little bit of a diamond pattern on his shirt, which is kind of a little Mr. Sinister-y.
And if you go with the idea and you look at, like, if you're going to have it as anybody, like the Dracula's look, it looks like right away, kind of does have a sinister, kind of like in a weird manga-esque way. So that's what I'm assuming.
And just in like that. A couple of places, they show a red diamond on his chest above the cult Spiral X symbol. So, And then from there we go, I guess, elsewhere in the compound where Surge, who's that girl who has the electrical powers, I guess kids who have powers in this cult have to come in for periodic checkups to see how things are going. And the nurse checks on her. Go ahead.
I take ADHD medicine. And what happens is, like, every 6 months, I do have to go. They kind of went away from that. But the idea, you have to go because of insurance purposes and things like that. And you have to sit there and they say, okay, is it working? Yes. Have you had these certain thoughts? No. Okay, get going. That's all it is. And you're paying a copay for that. That it exactly reminded me of that play of having to just go to check up, ask, boom, you're gone. But in the meantime, she's kind of a bad girl. She is, right?
Are you allowed to bring your phone with you when you go to these appointments? Well,
yes, I am.
She's not.
No, she's not. I love the idea where you have that little note, no phones. And I'm sure it's because somebody could take a picture, release it, and they want to be pretty secretive,
right? The cult wants to be kind of secret because it's a secret cult. And the nurse or the doctor, I'm not sure who this woman is. Yeah, she's very cheerful and very cheerfully says, give me your damn phone. You can't do that.
I like this lady, too. When you have this sort of like doctor thing, nurse, it makes it like almost like a Stepford Wives or something to me. Like she's a little too nice as they do it, especially as you move on.
The smile a little too big.
And then even like the eyes, when you see like that, it's like really odd and kind of creepy in a way that's really well played out, I thought. But you keep going because we get to see our man, the Shadow King, is still there.
So Surge, who we don't really like, she's done some pretty horrible stuff, maybe killed a dude. But she is curious what's up with Kageyama. They're not really friends exactly, but they know each other in the cult. And she knows, I guess, that he's here. And so she starts poking around on her way out. And there's this room, and there's these tendrils of shadow coming out of the cracks around the door, which it looks really cool, very creepy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's something that we kind of seen from him, the whole shadow deal. So you keep going. But I actually like... I like that she actually does seem concerned because at one point she seemed to hate him. But it might be one of those, like, they're kind of in the same situation. So they kind of, curious of that. But it's pretty crazy.
It's like a school rival. There's kids I went to school with who, I was, wanted to beat all the time, didn't really care for. But I thought they were kidnapped and, horrible things
you
happened.
Might wonder, maybe you can help. Yeah, you might be a little concerned. I would hope. But he's in bad shape, it looks like.
Yeah, because then we get to see, she doesn't get to see inside the room, but we get to see, and Kageyama, he's got those tubes hooked up to his head, the respirator on, he's kind of being kept unconscious. And then we learn from the maester there that his power isn't just this kind of psychic projection thing we've seen. He has the power to activate mutant powers in others. Like people have latent genes that haven't expressed themselves, he can wake up that gene. Which makes perfect sense because we have seen it twice.
Yep, we've seen it twice. And that's pretty cool. And the way they say it, and even then when they have it, it's very like crazy where they have, his blood is this, and you have the look of pouring. It's pretty disgusting, the whole deal, even though it's kind of a cartoony way. But all I keep thinking of, because, like you said, with Sinister and things like that, the idea is he making clones? Is he going to do things with the blood, things that a Sinister would do? But we don't get that far yet. But it's pretty crazy, and especially the awakening potential of maybe his blood, because you even see again there might be ceremonies that they have these kids come and almost like baptize him in, his blood to kind of activate the gene.
We know
That's
that
crazy.
This cult thinks that the end times are coming soon, and they want all the powers to wake up. So I guess. Maybe that's why he's being kept sedated now? Are they trying to use his powers to just wake up the whole congregation?
Just wake up everybody, yeah. And in that you did have him talking to all the kids and saying, it's almost like children, you're our future. The whole song deal.
Teach them well.
Teach them well. Exactly. So he's like trying to kind of get them ready, and then even having the kids come in to kind of check in. You don't really see a lot of adults being involved anymore. It's just these kids and the adults that are running it. So it looks creepy as hell and nefarious. And then start having where some of the characters start even like infighting in the whole deal as they start talking about some failures and stuff is pretty big.
They say even more specifically, this other woman who's there with him says, "Oh, is this the group of kids you were talking about? You want to be brought to their full potential? Hisako Ichiki, Mei Igarashi, and Nico Minoru." So very, very specifically, he has his eye on,
our main characters.
X-Men heroes.
Yeah, our X-Men stuff. So that's pretty crazy. And then even in that, when you do have, this going on, like I said, they're kind of like, hey, this lady comes in and she's like, these experiments, there was another death. You better keep this under control. I'm going to end up talking and telling Emperor Sunfire. And it like gets pretty big. But again, it's like kind of like, yelling at each other.
This lady comes in, and she is not subservient at all to the Meister. In fact, her name is Viper, and I hadn't noticed my first read-through, but on that opening blurb, the recap, they changed it, where it says right there that overseeing the Eastern Territory is Sunfire, and his right hand Viper.
Yeah, Viper. They added that in. So
I went back to check,
hand.
but this is brand new. I don't think we've seen her before. She's
I don't
here.
think we have. Yeah,
and I don't know if she's like connected to Madam Viper, who's connected from Hydra in the main universe, or if she's brand new. Don't know that it matters, but yeah, she's like an envoy directly from Sunfire, who reports directly to the Maker, and she kind of wants to know, hey, cult guy, what's going on here? Because the cult, and we were wondering about this, the cult is operating under the permission of Sunfire.
That's what's weird. And I was going to say that before, the idea that in this universe, you think of the idea of, heroes becoming heroes and rising up. That's completely against what the Maker went, completely against the whole idea. But this feels like it is like a government-sanctioned thing that the Emperor Sunfire knows, and you even have his right-hand gal here, Viper, to do it. And
now, we don't know
crazy.
If Sunfire is doing
if he's
this
on the up and up,
at the behest of the Maker, or if he's hiding, or he's been hiding this from the Maker. Because this has been going on, we know Nico's grandmother knew about this, so it's not new since the Maker got locked away.
If you ask me, I don't think that. I think Sunfire's hiding it. I think that's why you don't have the cameras, you don't have anything in it. It makes it feel like kind of that cool cult thing of us thinking, oh, they don't want the regular people to know.
Right.
I think
like he wants his own army to oppose the Maker, maybe.
Exactly, and using the idea of knowing about the X gene and maybe being able to do this to use that against it, where maybe it was hidden or something happened with, or again, this is the funny play. Even though, again, it throws me for a loop, the idea that they say this might not tie into anything, but the idea that the Maker, if he's going to try to stop the X-Men, I can kind of guess that he's going to stop Xavier, Wolverine, Scott, all those. He's not going to worry about kids in Japan that haven't had their powers, end up coming to fruition.
And I think that's
where Sunfire would be the deal.
The X gene, if you just want to stop Spider-Man, you have one spider to take care of. There's one point. But if there's this gene that's popping up all over the world, it's whack-a-mole. You can't get them all.
No, and I think we even mentioned it from the beginning, and other people have even before this whole thing came out, thinking about, like you said, the Maker stopping Spider-Man, you squish the spider, doom, done. With the X-Men, how do you stop a genetic mutation type deal? And we thought, well, he won't be able to. So what I thought was, well, what you do then, get rid of Xavier, so then he's not going to be able to bring them together, teach them. They're just going to be in the wild doing their things, whatever. That's kind of what is happening here. But instead, too, Sunfire seems to maybe be making a cult around it, and then also finding a mutant whose thing triggers the mutation. It's pretty crazy. I mean, it could be pretty big. Again, it throws me, the idea that it might not tie into anything, but it's pretty big.
The same week that I learned that, it's not going to tie in, it starts to seem to tie in.
Yeah, it's like it ties in, and it's like, okay, he's started. But again, if you're going to play the idea that maybe you can't tell everything because of how it isn't saying, it's not going to tie in everything because maybe the play is it's its own separate thing of Sunfire, and then eventually somebody, we'll have to see. We'll have to see, but I do like that idea that Sunfire realizes, okay, we're going to squash the knowledge of the X genes so that if somebody has mutant powers, maybe they won't say anything, they'll be looked at weird. But he knows, so he's taking advantage behind the scenes of making this army of kids. Again, get kids because they're going to grow up and you're going to need them, and the Maker's not there, whatever it would be. But I think that's a really cool idea, and I hope that it does get bigger and bigger like that. But even in the here and now, I think that this is probably the most interesting issue because, boy, some issues you're shooting basketball for half the issue. This thing's balls to the wall if you're into it. If you're not, I still don't think this is going to,
Two issues worth, is that like at least 2 issues worth of reveals relative to what we had
It
so
almost
far.
feels like somebody ended up saying, listen, Peach, the sales are good, everything's going, but to keep them up, the big complaint is not enough is happening each issue, so let's do it. And we said before, Peach may not be, the greatest of pacing and also transition, so it does feel like a lot is kind of thrown at you at a point by the end. But by the end, I'm rereading it now. I'm actually even getting more excited about it because of the idea of, oh my God, this could be that. And I don't think many of the other books now have that, oh my God, like maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Oh, the Sunfire, like this is pretty intriguing stuff if you're into it. Again, I know that people listening and whatnot will say, oh, that stinks, there's no way. Well, then you're not into it. But, being into it, I'm very excited about maybe what could happen. But then,
as we said
really
before, the month-to-month feels kind of slow, but I think this would read great as a trade.
Yeah, I agree. When you could read it all in a row, I think it would be a lot better.
So this Viper lady also wants to kind of crack the whip a little bit because she says, hey, things aren't going so great. There's been another death, and then how many does that make this year? So something that Meister here is doing is killing people off. Probably kids with powers waking up in a bad way.
Yeah, or, really. And then the funny thing, Kageyama, it seems like he's listening, right? Even though he's sedated, and Maestro, I keep wanting to say Maestro, ends up saying he's fine, he's sedated. She says, or is he sedated? Whatever. He ain't sedated. You can tell. He can see. And then he actually kind of attacks him because he's
waking up. And also the Meister says that he's burned all the failures, all the bodies. And we find out later, maybe not so much. So I think he's kind of lying here to Viper to
I think not get in trouble. And they ended up mentioning, again, we said the characters that are the big concern, and you end up Kageyama, like these are the people he starts kind of reacting to that and even starts to attack. And it shows you he is pretty powerful. I mean, I don't like him, and I don't think you were supposed to like him, but you kind of get in this that, maybe he's not so bad. Maybe a lot of the things he's being controlled or being forced into because he seems to be defending a bit here and getting upset. So I don't mind that.
This scene is in that interview, Zach Davison said that one of the influences from Marvel on this story is the Barry Windsor Smith what do you call
Weapon X stuff?
Weapon X story.
Okay,
exactly.
that would make sense.
This scene here is pretty much straight out of Weapon X, where you see that he's supposed to be sedated. He has all these tubes coming out of him, but he's still waking up and resisting the sedation more than anyone expects. And at this point, he sends his shadows out, attacking the Meister, who looks like he's having like a heart attack or something.
Yeah. He's not looking good. But even then, it's crazy because then he says, save me, Viper. And then she gets out like a little, I don't know, like a stem stick.
It turns into a little action scene where she kind of, even her posture, she charges in through the shadows. She has a little thigh holster of, I don't know, drug ampules or something.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah.
And she pops him one in the neck and puts him, back out. And the whole time he was saying, Hisako, my Hisako. So we know we've seen this already, as some kind of obsession with armor.
The thing that I get in this issue that made me interested as well is then Viper says, is this boy subconsciously reaching out to Hisako?
Not so subconsciously.
He's like full out. And the thing that gets me though is like as we were going, we thought Hisako was like kind of just a girl who ended up armor power. But not thinking in my mind that it was big that anybody would be concerned with her. But this seems like Viper is the right-hand gal of the Emperor and knows who she is. And she actually is saying the name and saying all the names. Like she even knows, they might be around each other and things like that. That's pretty crazy. And even says this boy's reaching out to her. Like you said, reaching out, all right, trying to, get handsy.
Right, like somebody says Bill, and do you mean William Smith Jones? Like, she knew exactly just from the first name.
Yep, she knew exactly who it was, and that's pretty big. Again, it's weird because when you see her there, when she says it, like I want to say that she looks like nice, and so who knows? I don't know. Like you said, we don't know that if Sunfire's doing it, if it's actually as nefarious as it is, or more, or whatever the case may be.
I'm sure
weird.
If Sunfire's doing it in this universe, it can't be good.
Yeah, it can't be good, but I mean, they're going to want to maybe use them, not exactly kill them. It's not going to be like, the Maker said to kill all the superheroes, let's get them down. We both think that maybe Sunfire has these ulterior motives, but then we go off to see, some of the gals that we have, and they're in school, and again, things just happen, like boom, boom, boom. There's not a lot of downtime in these things of characters and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, so Hisako and Mei are hanging out at the end of school, changing back into their street shoes, as you do in Japanese high schools. And somebody just bumps into Hisako, kind of hurries past her. And her armor powers kind of trigger automatically, like a shield, it seems. So there's some conversation about, I think my powers are getting stronger. But also, the girl who pushes past them, who kind of has a mean look on her face, doesn't stop and say excuse me or anything. This is, it's pronounced Canon. And that is the character that we've all been calling Quanon in the regular universe.
In the regular jump.
Yeah, we've been mispronouncing it ever since she was created. It's supposed to be pronounced Canon.
Yeah.
I saw an interview with Fabian Nisaiza, just a print one, where he said, "Yeah, I just picked the name out of a book. I don't know how to say it either." But
and I like
it's a different way of transliterating between Japanese words and English characters.
I like Quainon better. It sounds better to me. Like, I mean, obviously, Canon sounds pretty badass, but I like the other. But even then, I like May. It's like, excuse you. Like, yeah, she's my favorite still. But again, you end up having all these things, this festival they're going to have, but then we follow canon. And now another character that, these things and whatnot being introduced, that it is pretty hot and heavy in this, some of the information.
Yeah, she goes off to kendo practice. Kendo being that Japanese martial arts sport where they use like a bamboo or
they
wooden
use the bamboo
sword.
Stick, yeah, the sword.
Yep. And still the very traditional dress and armor and mask thing. It's in all the animation.
And it looks
stuff.
great.
It does.
To mention, I mean, if there are people who say the art isn't good in this, I love it. I think it's really good, especially when you see her character design and the traditional deal is really good.
It's completely its own thing. It doesn't look like Marvel House style. It doesn't even look like a super detailed version, but it's this watercolor, impressionistic, it's kind of the facial expressions and poses are kind of exaggerated at times.
They're exaggerated.
But,
oh, yeah.
In a clearly a manga-inflected kind of a way.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you want to see exaggerated expressions. Here comes Kenna's brother, who is over the top exaggerated, but it works, I think, in my mind, with what goes on. But again, you go with
so
this.
So she's been kicking ass there at kendo practice, and then she goes to visit her brother, and her brother reminds me of the brother in Spy Family who works for the government.
Yuri. That's who it reminded me of. If I didn't do any notes, but I probably would have put Yuri. Because he's almost exact. It's pretty funny, right?
Yeah, so she goes to chat with her brother, and brother's like, we know you can kick ass there. Stop just beating people up. Try to teach them. Try to be helpful. No, she's not interested in that.
Yeah, and it plays it out. The brother seems to be respectful, and he wants to, hey, I'm a good influence. I'm going to be respectful. I'm this officer here. She does seem, again, showing when, especially in Japan, she walks by, bumps into people, doesn't even say anything. And also when she looks back, I didn't even say, she looks back.
No,
and it almost
sen.
Yeah, and when she looks back in that scene, you almost get, is she looking back because the power activation, because the armor power was activated a little, or did she look back and like, hey, get out of my way, jerk? But you could go with whatever, either one. But again, she's not very polite. She goes to kendo practice and just beats the crap out of people and enjoys it. And her brother, I like that.
What she says to her brother, she walks into his office and says, "Yo, I beat the hell out of some software."
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's an attitude.
That's the first words we hear out of her.
Exactly. And again, you keep going with this, she may end up right up there with me, because she is pretty cool. And right away is like this rebel type deal going. And even Surge is kind of that way too, with the phone and stuff earlier. So, but she's a baddie. But yeah, the brother is Yuri. If you do read Spy Family, you'll know what we're talking about and probably get a giggle, because Yuri is the most sus character in all of comics or manga, I think.
Ooh, that's a bold statement, Jim.
Well, I'm telling you, the idea in this, though, is this brother at least says, don't follow me. If it was Yuri, he'd be behind just like desperately trying to catch up with Yuri. But it's a cool interaction.
Yeah, so there in the office, as brother and sister are chatting, an older woman walks in and makes like a report as a citizen to the police and says, I walk along the river all the time, and for the past couple of days, I've seen this just suitcase hanging out there. And I'm just going to call him Yuri. The brother there, he's like, well, I got to go check it out. And he gets on his bicycle and rides out there. And I guess Cannon runs behind him.
She runs behind him. Really, it seems like she's running. Also, I want to point out, the lady says, hey, I saw this suitcase. And Ken goes, interesting. She actually sings it. I thought that was really cool. And yeah, she runs. It looks like she's like leaping around too. And he's all pissed off. I don't know how to read
this. I mean, you could almost read this like she has a mutant power of some kind.
Exactly, yeah. I mean,
or it could just be kind of comedic. She's so into it that she runs behind him. And I did check in the 616, there is no brother of Cannon. She has no relatives. She was raised by the Hand, on that other cult. And as far as we know, no relatives.
Maybe the play here is because she is a younger girl and parents know you end up having to have somebody raise her. So the brother would be kind of cool. And to hook him into the police and things, I think is an interesting thing to get to the scene anyway. Because nothing's going to go well when you go and see an abandoned suitcase by the river that has flies all around it. Like there's bad things.
It's not pornography. No.
No.
You might think it's like a suitcase full of dirty books, but no.
Exactly. That's usually like a bag, a trash bag I would find in the woods. The suitcase down near the river, that's some other crap. And he even realizes, like, he does not want her to open it because he realizes there's something bad. It looks like
the very bad kind of sus.
Yeah.
There's
really.
flies. It looks unwholesome. And she rushes right in, opens it. There's a smell and everything. She rushes right in. Before he can radio in, she opens it, and there's a dead body inside. I think mostly in like chopped up in pieces and garbage bags.
Yep, chopped up pieces and bags and things like that.
And is that a tattoo or like a brand on a piece of body
To
part?
me, that's what it looks like. It looks like you have a tattoo, and it even has a number on it, the deal. And again,
you
this
see
goes...
that symbol, that X with a spiral, and the number 127. Don't know what that means.
I know it's like, what is it, with Jack A? That's at 127. 227.
227, Jim.
That's what it was. Sorry. But the big thing
I know
of this,
my 80s sitcoms.
Exactly. The things that you said earlier is the big thing, though. Yeah, I don't think all the bodies were burned. Because the whole idea of we won't have any, and again, they want to burn the bodies. That's evidence. That's the whole play of this and whatnot. Even not just mutants, but also we killed people. And this is like, why you would go through the effort to do this than just throw him on a funeral pyre, I don't know. But maybe he doesn't like the smell. But the smell here is pretty bad. The brother just upchucks. Mm-hmm. And he smells this.
She takes a photo of the suitcase, which could be very big down the road.
Yeah, really. Well, and again, I think maybe the play, because in that, they get a visit the next day, or at least the brother does. And I'll tell you, at first, I didn't recognize that it was the brother. I don't know why. Like, without his hat on, he looks really like over the top bad. But
also, this apartment building he lives in, there must be a million look just like this in Japan, because it's the same one in every manga, every anime. It looks to me like a motel, like a two-level. You're upstairs, you're downstairs, tiny little apartments. And he gets woken up, I guess, early in the morning because he's asleep, and it's that Viper lady at the door.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, with that, the only difference between the idea of these apartments is sometimes they've got more apartments, but it's always the same. And I swear to God, I can hear the cicadas going, because when you pull into this, there's definitely going to be cicadas before this bell ring, so it plays out. But yeah, it's Viper. Viper with some cool glasses, too. I like her with those glasses.
Very neat. Snake eye type glasses.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty cool. But yeah,
she's very intimidating, too. And she makes the brother, the cop, sign a non-disclosure agreement. And that thing that you found, you can't tell anybody about that, or boy, are you in trouble.
And it's I'll give them credit. I mean, I would assume that Cannon would come back and her brother would be dead, because this is bad stuff and really high stuff. But again, they seem to be, like I said, we know they're sus, but the idea that they don't just come in and kill him, I'll give them credit. And even then, the play, I thought they wiped his mind, but he's actually playing the game. He knows what he should do and not do, because because Cannon comes and is like, hey, what about that suitcase? And he's like, what suitcase? I don't know what you're talking about. But he's playing the idea of, hey, I signed this and you better shut your mouth too.
Yeah, as far as you're concerned, there was no suitcase. So we don't know where she said she was from, or what about her makes him so incredibly scared. I mean, in this universe, it's not even called Japan. Things are weird and different.
Yeah.
So something about her, we know she's high up in the government. So she intimidated the hell out of him.
It's weird, too. She goes to intimidate him. I would have thought they'd just kill him. And they even have him sign an agreement, but give him a copy. Like, that seems a little too much evidence and stuff, right?
Does it say, don't tell anyone about the suitcase full of body parts and the tattoo?
That we've been doing and killing people and we're a cult? Like, why would you write this down? Like, again, it seems like it would be something that you come in, hey, that suitcase that you found? Yeah. No, you don't. And then walk away and go, oh, crap, I know who that is. Like, flash something and not write it down and give it to him. But I guess that's the play here. She reads it and just is like, but again, I think that she's, she don't follow the rules. She bumps into people. She doesn't even say, sorry. So I think she's going to start looking into this more. But then we have like a fun little ending until it's not so fun, because all the girls are gathering for this festival, and it's cute.
They're off at the Moon Festival, and it looks beautiful. They have all these glowing lanterns. Some of the girls are dressed in the traditional yukata kind of outfits that look amazing. And it just looks like a great time. There's the stalls selling all the different traditional foods. And boy, you think, boy, that'd be a nice place to be. I'd like to be at that festival. And, they meet up with all the other main character girls, Nico, Natsu, Mori, Mei, and Hisako. They're all there. And then they look up in the sky, and it's not a bird or a plane, and it sure as hell ain't Superman. It is a big spiral, shadowy eye. And they say, is it getting bigger?
Yeah, and I love the idea where like, oh my God, there's an eye. And I think it's May, and they're kind of like, oh, I saw that yesterday. I just thought it was something. And then, oh, I saw it, but I thought it was just me. And you have that eye. And the thing is, you did see kind of that eye earlier a little, but not quite as, pronounced as that. But when Kageyama started attacking, you did have one panel. It's like a side deal as you had I always want to say the damn thing, but Viper had to jump in and stop him. You kind of saw it in a little different angle. So I would assume it's him.
Kageyama, he's being restrained. He's being held by the cult, but he's clearly using his powers to kind of reach out.
Yeah, and I think that's what this is, him reaching out to them.
Especially for Hisako.
Yeah, and Hisako, and again, he's also heard everything that was told in that room. He was not sedated as much, so he said Hisako, but it was also mentioned all the other girls. So I think that, especially, we said he has something with Hisako, trying to warn her maybe, and maybe the other girls. But I'm telling you, I just love the idea that as this big, giant black eye is there, both, Natsu, I believe it was, and May are like, oh yeah, we saw that before. We didn't think anything of it. I'm like, really? You didn't think anything of that? But now it's there.
I can imagine, like, if you see shapes in the clouds, like, oh, that kind of looks like a pony, that kind of looks like a starfish, whatever. But yeah, I guess maybe over time it was slowly growing and becoming more distinct.
That's what I wish maybe the dialogue should have been. Oh, that's what it is? I saw it before and just thought it was like, it seems like they're like, oh, I saw that giant eye looking at us before. I just didn't think anything of it. I like that Natsu's just like, I just thought I was crazy. Like, I didn't want to say anything. If anybody else hasn't seen it, I was going to say it. But it's pretty crazy. And then, yeah, as they say, is it getting bigger? And then it's, if you wanted information, you wanted some intrigue and some things to set up, this has to be by far the most that we've gotten in the series.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I'm not going to tell people if they're listening and they're like, I hate this series. This isn't a jumping on point. If you haven't liked it, I don't think there will be. But if you have been going, it almost feels like things are starting to pay off for actually having the patience to get to this. And it's pretty cool, even though still don't know anything of the big thing, but it's more intriguing. You're getting more characters. Canon is big. You have all that. So I thought it was, and I like her brother. Her goofy brother. Once I thought it was Yuri, then I really liked the brother, but we'll see what's going on. Viper's huge. The mention of Sunfire, you get all these things are really big. So that is pretty darn big.
The reveal that Kageyama they know that he can wake up powers, and that ties into what we saw of Hisako and her armor appearing, and that flashback of May and her powers appearing. It's all kind of starting to come together and hold together in a tighter way, which is a lot of fun.
And I will mention, a lot of people, the big play, because of the eye patch and the things with Natsu, saying, oh, that's this version of Cyclops, things like that. And I kept saying, well, look at the next issue's cover. Yeah, it looks like she takes that eye patch off and she has a laser eye going. So we'll have to see how this ties in, or if it doesn't, like we said, we know. But the next cover looks pretty cool with all the characters. And we're getting more and more characters, which is cool. But what would you give it?
Yeah, this is clearly the best issue we've had of this since the first one, at least. We started off at a kind of a high where it was a brand new thing, meeting these new characters, and then it kind of started just meandering and kind of stretching out and still looking kind of cool. But yeah, now we get a lot of things that make me go, wow, I'm glad I've been reading this. I want to read it some more. I guess I'm going to give this an 8.3 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going to go 8.8. I liked it, and I like the character designs, and I think it's also getting used to the art style, too. You kind of get used to something, but I really do like it. I like the idea that it's weird. I like that it's separate, and I've said it's doing something on its own, but it's also really diving into something me and you both like, Japanese culture, even if it's not quite Japan in this other universe, but it really is going full Japanese culture and the things that I like. And I'm telling you, the more and more characters that are introduced, I think there's some fun, quirky character. That brother cracks me up, but even having Canon and how she's kind of badass. Surge, I always forget about how kind of cool she is because she's kind of the bad deal, but she took, things going, and we'll have to see. her phone got confiscated. All that. She's all pissed. But yeah, I even like the crew and stuff like that. And even in an issue that you don't have much of the main characters, we do learn about some other things and some bigger things. So I'm in. I'm 8.8.
Yeah, and I'm expecting that Kageyama is going to do something big. I mean, he might end up not being quite a hero, but not quite a villain either.
Yeah, I don't think he's as bad as we think he is. I think he's just a kid who's kind of been
some
at this
teenager
place.
Things going on. He's been treated really badly by a lot of ways, so we'll see which way he goes. If he can break out of that cult. And his obsession with Hisako was a little bit creepy. That's the only part that makes me think that hard for him to be a real hero without.
And it was weird because you could have played it in a way, because it seems like he's kind of lonely anyway. You could have played it as he's just desperate for a friend, but it was way beyond that. It was creepy. It went creepy. Now, luckily, he's like of age, not act age, because then it gets creepy again, but of age, the idea of this play of, kind of as a crush on her, a school.
Yeah, they're still teenagers.
It still went too far. And though I'm looking, because at the end I'm looking at this cover, and I'm also looking at, they have all the Ultimate books. I know that people get fired up anytime I say anything about this, but I think this is my favorite Ultimate book. I think it is. It almost was the point. Ultimate Spider-Man I like, but it's just kind of all the books. And Black Panther's just doing Black Panther. It's nothing different or new or whatever. Ultimates, I think, is a wreck. And
we argued about that in the Slack. I like the last issue of Ultimates a lot more than you did, even though I think it's way too depressing.
Yeah, it's so depressing. And even that, it's like, I don't know what that book is trying to do either. It just seems like, okay, we're going to show you all the ways that people didn't become here. I'm like, I don't need that, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I didn't need a whole island full of people that the Hulk made get cancer.
That was the one before, and then you end up where here you end up the last issue with the Fantastic Four and stuff, and some people liked it more than me as well.
Where this book, Ultimate X-Men, it's got some scary things going on. It's got some oppressive things going on, but we've also got some cool, Genki characters, as a friend of ours might say.
Genki indeed.
We've got Yuri showing up there, the police department. And we've got some intriguing things going on. So I agree. This is the best of the Ultimate line of books.
I like it. And I had two people this week when, the review copies hit and people get them and whatnot, said that this book is, and Gray's one of them, speaking of Genki, he said the minute he got the review copies, he said the first thing that he's reading is Ultimate X-Men, and that says something. So I kind of dig it. I like it as a quirky deal.
It's not going to be everybody's favorite book. If you read the first couple issues and it didn't click for you, it's just not going to.
Yeah, so at an end, my little, on a soapbox deal is, I don't get mad if people don't like the book. I understand it. But they can't understand why we like it. Like it doesn't seem to go both ways. But I understand why they don't like it. But you could just not like it. That's fine. If it's not for you, it's not for you. So there you go. That's my soapbox moment by the end. But thanks for joining me, Jason. Thanks everybody for joining us for this episode, because this will head us out of it. And with that, everybody, we will talk to you all later.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.